Hey folks, in this video I'm going to do a fingerboard workout in real time and I invite you to follow along with me. I'm going to pitch this workout for beginner to intermediate level, so I'm going to do all the hangs today on 2 hands, which hopefully should roughly match the intensity that most people do fingerboarding on. Today I'm going to still do the hangs at a normal intensity, so I'm just going to add some weight to myself. So in the rest in between the actual hangs, I'm going to pass on a bit more information about hangboarding in general and how you can make all the adjustments to the loading that you need to do, and also a little bit of climbing inspiration, because that is really what drives our motivation for training. So the first stage of the workout obviously is to warm up, and so I'm just going to start off with a basic hang on the jug on the fingerboard, and I'm going to do 2 of those and move on. So here we go, just a basic hang. Now I'm not relaxing my shoulders right down, I am actually engaging my shoulders slightly, just pulling in my shoulder blades, my scapulae. And all that's doing is just waking up my body, telling it that we're going to be doing some exercise now and we're getting ready to pull. It also just changes my focus from what I've been doing this morning, which is working at a computer, to thinking about exercising and thinking about enjoying my training, and it just feels nice to hang. So I've done 2 of them, and we're just going to gradually build up, wake up the body, wake up the fingers, ready to hang. And so the next stage in the process is just to do a few pull-ups. If you're at a beginner level and just doing 1 or 2 pull-ups isn't really a warm-up exercise for you, then you could put a chair below your fingerboard and support your feet a little bit, or in this case I could put my foot on a foothold, but I don't need to do that. I can do around 25 or 30 pull-ups or something like that, and I'm just going to do 5 or 6 just now. Oh, it feels good. Now, right from the get-go, I was using my chalk bag and chalking up my hands just to get them nice and dry and ready for action on the fingerboard. Normally, I've got a little fan over there that I would normally put on. I won't do that today because it'll interrupt the sound of this video, but I would normally do that to dry my fingertips. But it's not too humid in here today. When I used to have a fingerboard in my house rather than in the garage here, then I would open a window, just let a little bit of breeze through. So you can see that just doing a few pull-ups has already got some breath going. I'm breathing a bit, I feel sharper and more ready for action. And I'm just going to do 1 more set, or exactly the same, do half a dozen pull-ups. From straight arm right to chin, so quite strict form, going right to fully straight arm. So I've done 4 sets already, and I've not touched any of the smaller holes. I've just purely been on the jug. Depending on how you add load to yourself or use 1 or 2 hands, you can adjust the load in many different ways on the fingerboard. For the next stage of our warm-up, I'm going to move straight on to the 20mm edge and do a few just simple hangs from that. For many people in the bell curve of finger strength, they should be able to do that as part of their warm-up with no added weight, just as I'm about to do now. But if you're more at the beginner end, again, you can use that chair or other form of support for a foot to take some weight off. But really, we still want to load a slightly smaller edge in preparation for what we're going to be doing in a minute, which is the harder hangs. Here we go. So again, I'm hanging straight arm. I'm just using a chisel grip. On the next set, I'll change my grip. And I'm hanging from straight arm, but I am engaging my scapula. So I can definitely feel that in my forearms. That definitely felt like proper exercise, but it certainly was far from intense. So I'm going to take 1 minute before I do the next warm-up set. I should say also that your requirement for warming up on the fingerboard may vary quite considerably from mine and from the next climber, depending on your level of fitness and your training history and how used to the fingerboard you actually are. If you feel you're not really warmed up or tweaky or not as good as you should be, feel free to deviate from this workout and do more warming up, just more sets of the same thing or with a slower progression. Okay, time for another one of the same. This time I'm going to use a half crimp grip and hang for around 10 seconds. Now, I could hang for much longer than that if I wanted to, and that's what you want to feel when you're warming up, is that the feeling that you could do more, but we're still being quite gentle. So I'm going to do 2 more warm-up sets before I proceed to the hard hangs. While we're resting for the minute, I should just say that if you have any more questions about this workout, please ask them in the comments below. I'll answer some of them and make another video if necessary. And I also want to say thank you for all the kind messages you sent about this channel, and also for subscribing to the channel and supporting it via Patreon. I really appreciate the help and the support, and I'm glad that so many of you are enjoying it. Okay, here we go. This time I'm going to do a 3-finger drag on the same 20mm rung, 10 seconds. There we go. That still feels quite relaxing to me, but increasingly I'm ready to do more. I have that feeling when I'm a bit more fired up. Ready for the effort of strength training. I'm going to do 1 more set of warm-up in 1 minute, but just while we wait, I want to say something about good form on the fingerboard. So one thing you'll see me do is center myself under the board and actually go through a little routine as I approach the board. I'll just talk you through it as I do it. Set my feet so that I know I'm in balance below the board, such that when I lift off, I don't swing. So I'm not too far in, so that I swing like that. I'm not too far out, so that I swing in the way. I want to just be hanging, so you get a feel for where you should be under the board. Okay, time for the last warm-up set, and this time I'm going to go onto this small 14mm edge, and I'm going to hang with a half crimp grip for 10 seconds again. Okay, so we've done several sets now, and I'm ready to move on to my hard hangs. We're going to have 2 minutes rest before we proceed to the first hard hang. We're going to do 3 sets of each of the 3 main grip types, and we're going to do them such that we can hopefully hang on for around 10 seconds. If it's a little bit more, or if it's a little bit less, it doesn't matter. The main point is that you go very close to the point of failure. Now at this point it's the most complicated part of fingerboarding, which is actually finding a way to reach the correct load. It may be for some of you that hanging with no added weight on a 20mm rung is exactly the right intensity to hang for 10 seconds. It may be that you can hang on a smaller rung like 14-15mm like this one. That might be the right intensity with no added weight. Or it may be that you need to add a little bit of weight to yourself. If you don't know how much weight to add, then I would recommend you pause the video and work that out, and then continue from there. To demonstrate this workout with 2 hands, I'm going to add some weight to myself. So you can see that I've got some weight hanging from a small pole support and a quick draw, and I'm just going to attach that to my belay loop and hang from that. But this isn't quite enough weight, so I'm going to wear my 5kg weight belt as well. And I'm going to put my weight belt on as well. And I just happen to know that that's going to be about the right weight for me to hang on the small rung of my fingerboard for around 10 seconds. I know that because I've worked it out earlier. It only took about 10 minutes to figure that out. So here we go, we're at the end of the warm-up and the training starts now. So are you ready for the effort? We're going to do this in a controlled manner, but we're going to squeeze out every last second. It's those last 2 or 3 seconds that really matter for strength training. So let's get keyed up and go for it. Matching the weight. Okay, while we rest in between sets, I'm going to tell you about one of the first really hard routes that I did after I actually started fingerboarding. I started hangboarding around 2005. I was living in Dumbarton, and you can actually see Dumbarton Rock in the background in this picture. In the picture I'm at a tiny sport crag called Dumbuck, and I was having a session on an 8C project that I was trying at the time. I'd tried it for many days throughout that winter and the spring, and I'd hit a serious plateau on it. I had the sequence absolutely wired and I really couldn't make any further improvements on it. I'd come up against the fact that I simply wasn't strong enough to link it all together. The individual moves were just too close to my limit. As the conditions ran out at the end of the spring, I decided to give hangboarding a proper try, never having done it before. I started my hangboarding program in the June of that year, and I did a workout essentially the same as the one in this video for 6 days a week. That might sound like quite a lot, but remember I was already a reasonably fit and capable climber. When I returned to the project in October, I was utterly shocked at the progress that I'd made. The progress on the fingerboard had seemed so minuscule, so it was barely even measurable. But the difference that it made on the rock was just massive, and I could complete the project right away. Over the coming year I kept going with hangboarding, and I really capitalised on this missing piece in my training. I jumped through the grades to do the first E11 trad route in the world, and I went from quite a mediocre bouldering standard up to doing several 48Bs and my first 9A sport climb. Okay, time for set number 2. Are you ready for the effort? Chalk up the fingers, work the chalk into your fingers, set yourself below the board. Good effort. So while we wait our 2 minutes, I'll talk to you about how many workouts of this type you might do in a given week. And there's no correct answer to that. It depends entirely on your own level of fitness, how long you've been climbing and training for, what other types of and amounts of climbing that you're actually doing in a week. With that said, I would say that a minimum of 2 sessions a week on the fingerboard is a good thing to aim for. And the maximum, well, many professional athletes might be able to do this workout every day, but you're probably not at that level of fitness. It's down to your judgment, or that of a coach if you have one, to try to judge how much fingerboarding you can actually handle. I would say that 3 workouts of this type per week is a good base to aim for, and that will be around the right level for many climbers. But it does vary either side of that. Possibly you can add a little bit more, possibly a bit less. What you'll see is that the actual total time of hard climbing that we're doing here, of hard hanging, is very little. It doesn't add up to a lot of time, it's not particularly fatiguing. So I certainly feel like after doing this, I could move straight on to doing a bouldering session or an endurance session on the climbing wall right away the same day, and certainly be able to climb the next day. In fact, I'd probably be able to do both, but again, my level of fitness allows that. You'll be able to judge that by thinking about the signals that are coming from your own body. Do your forearms feel stiff and sore? Do your finger joints feel stiff and sore? Do you generally feel tweaky? Does your power level, is it lower than it should be? Is it lower than you're used to? These are all signals to pay attention to. Okay, we're going to do set number 3 of the chisel grip. Okay, you ready for the effort? as we move to a different grip, it's a good time to talk about the different strength levels that you might have between those grips. I am roughly the same on all the grips. Possibly I'm slightly stronger, a few percent on a 3-finger open-handed drag, but actually only on a slightly bigger edge, not so much on the really small edge. So I'm roughly the same, so I don't actually need to change the loading or the weight setup that I need to do. Maybe I'll hang a couple of seconds longer on one of them. That really doesn't matter. That's not enough of a reason to actually change the amount of weight that I'm loading on myself to hang on the board. But you might be quite different. You might find that your crimp grip or your 3-finger drag is much weaker than the other ones, and so you might need to take some of this weight off for the other grips. Also, I'm doing 3 sets of each grip type in this workout. That's sufficient in many cases to make an improvement in strength. So you're always like in this balancing act between the number of workouts per week and the volume of work in each workout, and it's very difficult to be precise about what's right or wrong and how you judge that. I quite like to do several fingerboard workouts a week with 3 sets, but if you did one less workout a week with 5 sets, it's very difficult to say whether one would be better than the other, and they may well lead to the same place. So there are some details like that about this type of exercise that are really not worth worrying about all that much, unless perhaps you're having problems with injury or fatigue or lack of progress. The main thing to worry about with fingerboarding is that A, you do it in control, and B, you really push for those last few seconds to get the very most out of your muscles. Okay, ready for the next grip, which is the crimp grip, although today we're going to use a half crimp grip, so I'm not going to engage my thumb. That's good, that felt hard. Now you can see with my fingers, when I do the half crimp, I've got 3 fingers which are crimped at the proximal joint, and my little finger is actually open-handed, if you like, where it's only flexed at the distal joint and the proximal joint is actually fully open. Your finger length might be slightly different, so the way you actually take the hold might be slightly different. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It's going to depend on your individual morphology. The main thing is that you try and cover all your bases and that you're strong on as many different grip types as you can be. While we rest for 2 minutes, I'm going to tell you about a climb which is one of the most unusual but beautiful climbs that I've ever done on rock. This is the Long Hope route in the Orkney Isles. If you haven't seen the film of it by Hot Eggs Productions, it's a 400 metre long sea cliff climb, and I made the first free ascent of it several years ago with Andy Turner to give a tough E9. Out of any rock climb I've done, it requires a broader range of climbing skills, and it's almost more akin to alpinism because of the variety of terrain from loose, soft, vegetated and poorly protected rock climbing. I emphasise almost though. The top pitch of the route is a 70 metre pitch of 8B+, but really it all boils down to one move, a hard crimpy lock off a non-existent foothold. You need the endurance and technique to conserve your strength for many hours of climbing, so you still have as much of it as possible when you reach that move. But the more strength that you have in the first place, the more likely you are to be able to hang those tiny edges and actually climb the route. And of course, that's where many years of hanging on small edges pays off. While we rest, let me say something about fitting the hangboard routine in around the actual climbing. Later on I'll talk about actual numbers of sessions per week, but here I'm talking about prioritising either going out climbing versus training and how I switch between them. There's no generic right or wrong answer to this because the types of climbing you have access to and your goals are highly individual. On top of this, there's often more than one way to reach the same training or performance goal. For me personally, my priority is nearly always getting outside and going climbing. When the conditions are good, I tend to drop training altogether without a second thought and just go climbing. But calling it just going climbing kind of undersells it from a training point of view. Often I find that trying very hard on very hard projects can make me feel stronger than a carefully designed training cycle on my wall, and that when I go back to the hangboard, I feel that I've actually got stronger. It doesn't always work this way though, and it seems to depend on the exact nature of the climbing I'm doing, which is of course highly variable. As well as this, an underrated secret ingredient to making gains is the fiery passion that goes along with trying projects. And what underlies that is really caring about giving every last drop of effort to find out if the project is possible. With that said, the controlled environment of the board and the hangboard allows you to recreate this with consistency, and therein lies its value. Overall, I think both are important, and so I like the climate where I live, which offers plenty of prime conditions to climb, but also plenty of rain to force me back onto the hangboard. Okay, let's chalk up again and get ready for the third set of half crimp grip. This is the last set, so we're really going to hang on till the last second. Okay, next up is the 3-finger drag. We'll do 3 sets of that, and while we rest for 2 minutes, I'm going to tell you about a rather bold and scary route, but one which is okay if you have the right preparation. This is me working the moves on an E9 trad route called the Indian Face. It's actually quite low in the grade, but it has a big reputation because of the colourful stories told of its very few ascents, and because it's extremely poorly protected. A fall from the crux has the real prospect of being fatal, as is often the case with bold mountain trad routes. When I first went to try it in 2007, I'd had a really good winter of training and had spent the spring trying an extremely steep 8C plus first ascent in Scotland, and I felt very strong and confident. But I soon realised that I'd left too short a time to adjust that form for a slabby mountain trad route such as this. It was actually my feet that had too little endurance, and I found myself struggling to relax on them for long enough without my feet tiring and becoming sore and crampy. It was a nice reminder of the breadth of performance components across different styles of climbing. The following year, I just needed to go and on-site a bunch of E5s first to round out my readiness, and then I could get the route done without incident, as one must. These 3 sets are going to be the 3-finger drag, which is all 3 fingers as open as they can be with the little finger dropped. Now again, depending on your finger length, the arrangement of your fingers may be slightly different. As you can see, my middle finger is a little bit longer, and therefore it is still slightly flexed in the proximal joint, but only slightly, and both the ring and index fingers are fully open. But it may be that all 3 fingers for you are fully open. A huge part of training for me is the prospect of applying any hard-won gains on the climbs that I actually want to do. These shots are all of projects that I hope to return to over the coming months as they come into condition. This one is a 2-pitch route in Glen Nevis, which hopefully someday will be a tough E9 if I or someone else can do it. It's not hard to see why time on the fingerboard is a good plan to prepare to be able to do these moves a long way above your last protection. I do the bulk of my hangboarding in the year over the hot months of the summer, and then more intermittently in the winter months during spells of wet weather. This winter I'm hoping to get back on this superb Font 8B at Bryn Rock, first climbed by Rhys Langlands in the spring. I had a day on it just as the conditions were warming up at the start of the spring, and I was feeling not too far away from doing it. I wouldn't really enjoy trying it in the warmer conditions, so I noted it down on the project list to return to in October and restart the fun. You can see on that last move why the 3-finger drag is a good grip to catch and quickly hold on to small but positive edges. I don't need to jump quite so high in the initiation of the move as I would do if I wanted to catch that hold with a half crimp grip. That suits me well since my body is not all that strong. Alright, you ready for set number 2 of 3-finger open hand? Here we go. That's the weight. Brilliant, well done. So I don't know about you, but I'm starting to feel my fingers a little bit. I'm starting to feel like I could do with a proper rest, and that's just as well because we're going to do one more set. Now, as I say, I've pitched this workout for beginner to intermediate climbers. So, but it's very, very similar to the workout that I would do anyway on my own fingerboard. I would just be mixing that in with some real climbing on the bouldering wall as well, probably on the campus board at the same time. If your level of fitness allows, you could always add a few more sets if you want to work on specific things such as 2-finger pockets with middle 2 or back 2 or back 3, front 2, monos. It is a good idea to train all of those different grips, and if you would like me to do a video on how you might work them into a fingerboard workout that was a little bit different from this one, or maybe a little bit more advanced, then you can tell me in the comments. And I also want to say again, this is not the only way to work out on a fingerboard. There are other ways to arrange the workouts, and there's maybe not a right or wrong way. However, the thing that really matters for strength is to make sure that you're pushing the muscle to fire as many muscle fibers as possible, motor units, and that takes effort, that takes pushing it close to the point of failure. So that's really the only important part of this, along with good form. So let's do our final set of 3-finger drag. Alright, we are done with the hard hangs on the small fingery edges. We're just going to do one more set, which is pull-ups on the jug. Something that I always like to do as part of a fingerboard routine, especially if I'm working on a fingerboard just on its own and not near the climbing wall itself. So I'm going to keep all that added weight and I'm going to do some pull-ups to failure. Again, I don't think it particularly matters all that much exactly how many pull-ups you can do, as long as you can maybe do more than 5 and less than around 15. I think that's probably a good ballpark to aim for. So here we go. This one is going to feel a bit more physical. That's a strong finish to the session, and I'm definitely ready for a cup of tea now. If there's more videos you'd like me to make covering some specific aspect, then do ask me in the comments. But thank you for joining me on this video, and we'll see you in the next one. And please do remember to subscribe to the channel to make sure you catch that.